morning. I'm Superintendent Todd Bowden, and I'm here this morning with Oak Park Teacher of the Year, Shane Swezey, Sarasota County Teacher of the Year, Shane Swezey, Florida Department of Education State Finalist, Shane Swezey. We're going to spend some time this morning talking about issues that are near and dear to everyone's heart, but I just wanted to start with just a very heartfelt welcome and thank you. It's an exciting time of year. As we prepare for the start of the school year on Monday. I know you're extremely busy preparing your classrooms and offices for the arrival of students. I know many of you have Meet the Teacher and open house events going on throughout the week. But we just wanted to spend some time this morning with you, 20, 30 minutes. But I wanted to start, Shane, by talking about your experience in Orlando. I had the chance to kind of get in on the tail end of it, but I know you spent a week with Teachers of the Year from around the state. How was your experience?
Yeah, it was overwhelming. It was exciting, and it was humbling just to be among some of the best educators in this state. I think sometimes we forget kind of what's going on in this state, and we get very caught up in our little islands, our own little classrooms. But to see kind of the dynamic teaching across the state, the passion and commitment levels of teachers from all over, and just to see the good things going on regarding education was really, I think it was really encouraging. The whole process was quite extensive to be able to go in for really 4 days and get updates on what's coming, down the pipeline, to kind of get input into standards and testing, and just to hear from some of kind of the higher ups from the FDOE. It was really a rewarding experience, and it was something that I wish everybody got to go through, this opportunity, because I think sometimes. And Chancellor Oliva told this great story, and I think it sums up really well kind of how we often view things with the wrong perspective. And he told us, he's at the top of the top, really, almost chain-wise, and he started off as an EBD self-contained teacher. Yeah. And he told us, I started off as a teacher, and then I would look at my administration, and I'd be like, you know what? These administration, they don't know what they're doing. And then he worked his way up to be an administrator, and he got there, and he said, man, these people at the district level, they don't know what they're doing. And he worked his way up, and he was superintendent. Yep. And then when he got to be superintendent, he was like, man, those people at the state, they have no clue what they're doing. Now he said he's at the state and, trying to make changes. And he said, now I'm looking back down at the district level and being like, man, these superintendents, they don't know what they're doing. And he said eventually he'll probably end up just back in a classroom, with a bunch of students with EBD. But I think that's what was really rewarding. Was we always want to view, something else as where the problems lie, instead of seeing everyone as an integral part of the same, approach, the same process, everyone trying to actually work together instead of, finding where the blame can be placed. And I think seeing the commitment throughout those levels in the process was really something that I hope to bring, back to this district, that kind of focus and that kind of teamwork.
I have to tell you how impressed I was. We were over for the awarding of the State Teacher of the Year. Unfortunately, Shane was not recognized. I believe the gentleman from Hillsborough County was named as the State Teacher of the Year. But I've said before, if there was a Mr. or Miss Congeniality, Shane would have won that hands down. What was that part of the week like? I understand your guitar made a couple guest appearances throughout the week.
Oh, how does that get out? Yeah, so we had to. I figured if I was going to go into this, I was going to just be myself and play to my strengths. And my strengths are not this incredibly formal, long pedagogical approach of intense. I am, I'm dynamic. I like to build rapport. I try to be engaging. Those are kind of my strengths. So I said, definitely, if I have to do this for a whole year, I'm not going to pretend like I'm somebody I'm not. So I figured I would just be who I was. And we had to introduce one of the other finalists at the very kickoff of the whole event. And so I figured, why not, take this opportunity to write a song about my friend there, Dr. Dre Graham, who ended up winning
Another
Florida
music
Teacher of the
teacher?
Year.
Yes.
Another, band director at King High School in Hillsborough. And so I figured I would, write him a little tune. And it went over well. We had the whole audience chanting his name and singing along.
Nice.
So I ended up being known as the do something crazy guy because they thought, just Shane will do something. So hey.
You have to be careful. Sometimes that's an expectation that they want you to live up to.
Well, I came back, and then the ESC Summer Institute, and I had to continue that do something crazy approach, and they asked me to do another musical intro, and you probably got to witness my my rendition of "I Will Survive," except for teachers, and so I apologize that you had to be there for that.
So this morning we have 5,000 employees across the district. It would be impossible to field a question from every one of them. So what we thought we would do is give Shane the floor and kick off. The floor is yours.
Okay.
There are no limits. Anything you want to ask?
Yeah. So this is the Ask the Soup portion of our broadcast. So I'm going to start off. I'll make it like a couple softballs,
All right.
Really get
us warmed up.
Get us warmed up. We'll do like lightning round, and then we'll get into these. These are less softballs. Okay, so favorite food?
Favorite food? Chicken wings. Love chicken wings.
Spicy or not spicy?
I like to see how far I can take it on the spectrum. So I've been known to dabble in the nuclear. Yeah.
Dabble in the nuclear.
Not a full plate, but to try one just to see.
I think this would be a great school-wide fundraiser to see how hot your chicken wing eating can go.
Well, I've been known to get the sweats while eating chicken wings.
Favorite book?
Favorite book? I enjoy reading stories about real people. I'm almost ashamed to say it, I just got done reading the Magnolia story from Chip and Joanna Gaines from Fixer Upper, just kind of reading their real life story.
Yeah.
It's very uplifting.
Favorite movie?
Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary. I don't think you can live in Sarasota without being a Stephen King fan.
Oh, yeah. Favorite sport?
Football. Hands down, football. I love the fall. Football season is upon us. Bucks are in training camp. Kids at all of our high schools are training. It's just an exciting time of year.
And I'm imagining Florida State Seminoles have a special place,
Absolutely. We're looking for an upward trajectory. Hopefully last year was kind of us bottoming out, and we're hoping for better things this year.
Go Noles. And how could you not with a last name so similar to Bobby Bowden, the great football coach?
That's right.
Okay. So I guess we'll get into the less softballs, but I'm sure you can still hit these out of the park.
Sure.
So we'll start. I took a couple of emails from different staff members from Oak Park, and then I added a couple of my own just to kind of get some input into what's going on in the district. So I think we'll start off with probably the most apparent one, discussing Oak Park. What kind of plans are in place to improve kind of the climate and the perceived safety at Oak Park?
Sure. And so those of you that don't know, we took a good hard look at the workers' comp data. Was really kind of what opened our eyes to what was going on at Oak Park. Saw an increase in a number of injuries. I have to tell you, as superintendent, that's extremely concerning. I don't ever want to say that's part of the job. It shouldn't be. You should have an expectation that you go to school and you contribute to your students' lives, and you shouldn't be attacked, bitten, hit, kicked. And so when I see this list, it was really eye-opening. And so Dr. Laura Kingsley, our assistant superintendent, has had a group that's been working intensively on that. But specifically at Oak Park, one of the things we found is just very basic, that not all of the teachers there had received the CPI training,
right.
And how to de-escalate and even when to physically intervene. And so we've offered training sessions throughout the summer, 8 different sessions, I believe. Training was offered on the Oak Park campus Monday and Tuesday of this week. I've seen a draft copy of a new behavior management plan at Oak Park. I have to tell you, it was quite comprehensive. It was a draft, wasn't complete, and it was still 61 pages in length. there's been some additional staff added. There'll be 3 new behavior techs, a behavior specialist, and some other units. And I think it's just a matter of engaging. As I've said before, and I had a chance to interact with the Oak Park staff on their welcome back on Monday, is the expertise is in that room. As you said before, the answers don't always come from a district office. I think the answers are on the staff at Oak Park, and we just need to own the issue, to not try to talk around it or explain it away, but to hit it head on and make sure that the resources are there in place. And so I look forward to working with Jamie, the principal at Oak Park, and making sure that she has the resources that she needs to make sure that her staff is respected and protected on a daily basis.
Yeah, great. And I know one of the kind of the follow-ups with that, and we heard that from a lot of our teachers, was how do we, as a district, are we approaching kind of this balance? And I think it exists in every student, but particularly in our ESE population, the balance between trying to reach these academic standards that are being placed on our students while also understanding their varying levels of ability and their real need for functional life skills and activities of daily living, and kind of finding where that balance exists. Because I think some teachers feel like they're not able to really educate the student in ways that are important for them because of kind of the standards that are being placed.
So I think if you think about the analogy of a pendulum, is there was a point in time where the legislature felt compelled to act, that they believed that school districts had rather low expectations for their ESE students. So they did away with the special diploma.
Right.
They believed that quite honestly, that diploma option was being overused, was used with students for which it wasn't appropriate. I would characterize that as an overreaction, that a special diploma is appropriate for some of our students. If it was being overused, they should address that issue, not take that issue away altogether. Yeah. So by taking it away, now they've said, well, everyone will now receive academic instruction. And you know better than anyone else that that's not appropriate for all students. And so life skills are important. Coping strategies are important. Behavior modification is important. And so we're hopeful that, like any pendulum, it'll find some equilibrium. But the loss of the special diploma put us in a direction towards academic skills, and I think we've gone too far in that direction. And I hope that we can find a middle ground.
Yeah, I think that is the sentiment of a lot of, of the teachers at Oak Park and probably across the district, is we want the highest expectations for our students, but sometimes those expectations don't necessarily match up with the expectations that are, kind of being placed on them. And so,
well, the most telling to me is I had some interaction with a parent this summer that said, my child struggles to count to 10. That's the skill that we're working on, but yet we're working on algebraic concepts. And when you put it in those terms, who does that make sense to? That just doesn't make sense.
And it's hard sometimes to hear that, because I remember doing the same thing, incorporating economics and money into one of my music lessons for the week. And the kids loved it. We were doing songs about, coin values and dollar bills. And they said, oh, the kids just love this so much, but it's so hard because when we go back to the classroom, we have to learn about the leading imports and exports of the Florida economy. And
right.
I'm just trying to get them to know what a coin value is. So I think finding that balance.
Sure. I've been in your classroom, but I've seen you celebrate a student simply responding audibly, celebrating a student who hits a button on cue. And the idea that we're going to teach algebraic concepts or sentence structure, I don't think is realistic. And so I think we have to have high expectations for all of our students, but I also think we have to have realistic expectations also.
This was another one that came in, but and I think this is one of the big things across the county. But in what ways do you see Sarasota County and our school system working to recruit and retain the best educators in the state?
It's interesting. One of our board members has a recurring question that says, how do you know we're hiring the best teachers? When you're a law firm, you can target the top 10 law schools in the country. And so when we do hiring, the question that keeps coming back is, number one, are our positions filled? But number two, are we hiring the best teachers? My answer to that is our track record of performance is clearly we're hiring great teachers because we're getting great results. But I have to tell you, it's getting more competitive. We used to hold a competitive advantage over Manatee County. That was by and large because we had an additional mill of property tax and it impacted our salaries. And so there was a clear distinction in salaries between Sarasota and Manatee. Now that they have an additional mill of operating, they've put that into salaries. And our salaries are very competitive at the entry level. As you continue in your career, there are gaps that develop that we do pay more, but that's hard to convince someone coming in. And the other thing is making sure that we're recruiting a diverse, we want our teachers to reflect our student body. I think it's important that our students are able to, in their academic careers, see a teacher that looks like them and has a background like them. And so we've invested in our HR department. We have added 2 recruitment specialists. Not only are they going to work on developing relationships at all of our state universities, but we're going to target out of state. Florida's pretty attractive come February, so we're going to hit the road and get up north. And then we're going to specifically target those traditionally black universities like Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman.
Yeah. And I think this kind of piggybacks off of that, but so there's the new best and brightest qualifications and all that goes into that. But with those updates, and if people don't know, there's the bonuses have been changed in the allotment, talking about recruitment is one of the main areas now for just new teachers. And so how do we plan to keep kind of strong, experienced educators now in lower performing schools? Because with the move to not being eligible unless you're at a school that has a 3 percentage point average increase, there's 18 schools in the district where not one teacher is eligible for a best and brightest award. And I know, me being one of them, that was a huge incentive to stay in the classroom, not necessarily look at moving out of the classroom into an administrative position. And so, what does that look like, and is there options for those teachers to go and stay at lower performing schools?
First, let me start by talking about teacher bonuses. I don't believe that bonuses are the right way to compensate a teacher. They're very in vogue with the state legislature. It seems like every year there's a different bonus package. One year we have teachers that receive $7,200 in bonuses. The next year it's $1,000, it's $2,500. You can't take that to the bank and buy a house.
Nope.
You can't count on that year after year. And the other thing about bonuses, kind of the dirty little secret is, if I give you the same bonus year after year, that's not a raise. And so I can say you got a $2,000 bonus, but if it's the same $2,000 bonus you got last year, that doesn't do anything to change pay. And so it's interesting to hear the legislature talk that during the next session, they're going to focus on teacher compensation. I think the message that our legislative delegation has to hear repeatedly is, when you talk teacher compensation, that's got to be across the board. It can't be in the form of a bonus that changes from legislative session to legislative session. It's not the right way to compensate teachers, and I hope they take action on that. Specifically on best and brightest, we've looked at the numbers. The state has interpreted that statute pretty widely in regards to the way the statute reads, is a school has to make an average of 3-point gain over the course of 3 years. They've interpreted that pretty broadly. We believe that 21 of our schools will qualify for that. And it's not always the highest performing schools, because let's take Pineview for an example. They don't have 9 points to grow, so they're not on that list. And I've pointed that out to the commissioner, that the highest performing school in the state of Florida is ineligible. The way that best and brightest works is it'll be $2,500 for highly effective, $1,000 for effective at those 21 schools. And then what's left of that money can be distributed under what they call a recognition award. And so we'll be working on a plan to distribute that money. And so it is our hope that everyone receives something from best and brightest, but it won't be that $2,500 and $1,000. And unfortunately, it'll be one time and not across the board. But hopefully we can work together to to get the legislature to properly fund education.
Yeah, I would. I would love to not rely on a bonus every year. But I guess in that same vein, then, are we? I mean, obviously, you can't speak to something that doesn't exist. But are we, as a county, then trying to create opportunities for then salary increases across the board instead of luring and wooing people with hopeful bonuses?
Right. Couple things. First of all, the revenue for the district is set by the legislature. If you look at, if you anchor our revenues based on when our referendum first passed, we were down over 2 mills. When our referendum first passed, we were levying 9.2 mills. The millage rate that was just passed by the board is 6.9. And that includes the additional mill. And so there is beginning to be some talk about, do we go for a second mill of local option tax? I think it's something we seriously should consider. This community has always been supportive of education. If we did a second mill, it would take us to 7.9. It would still be well below what our rates have been traditionally. When we first passed our additional mill, we were one of the first in the state. Now that additional mill is very common. Yeah. And so if we're going to distinguish ourselves, we may have to go again. And I would hope that that goes directly into staff salaries.
Great. What are you drinking in that cup, by the way?
I get a lot of...
Tell the people.
I get a lot of questions about that. I never acquired a taste for coffee, and so I drink a Diet Mountain Dew to start my day. So it's not uncommon to see me carrying a can of Mountain Dew when you see me. That's my morning coffee. How about you? What do you got over there?
Oh, this is just water. I'm just fooling the people. But if you hear that, kids, if you're tuned into this, when your parents say it's 8 o'clock in the morning, it's too early for Mountain Dew, you can tell them what the superintendent does it. So,
it's never too early for Mountain Dew, but I will tell you, there are times it is too late for Mountain Dew. If I drink a Mountain Dew after about 5, 6 o'clock at night, it will keep me up at night.
This was one of the other kind of questions that we had come in, and I kind of tried to word it in kind of the same way. But we know that the teacher shortage, in Florida and in a lot of areas is kind of reaching epidemic proportions. We know that even just traditional education degrees are dropping in numbers of students enrolled and coming out. Have we thought about bringing back a county-based alternative certification program? I know that's how I got into teaching, was coming from an outside field and getting certified. But have we thought about maybe having the county be involved in providing a strong alternative certification program? Or have we thought about doing something like Polk and Pasco County have, where they have actually teacher prep programs that are starting with our high school students and giving them kind of a leg up, a jump start into going into the teaching profession?
The answer is yes. First of all, I'm an alternate certification person myself. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting, and I taught middle school math and went through an alternate certification prep program at the University of South Florida. Currently, the Barancic Foundation has funded an academy, so we've got teachers that are going through that. When we look now for math and science teachers at the middle and high school level, it is very, very rare that you find a math or a science education major. Typically, they are coming to us from other backgrounds and go through alternate certification. It's a little less common at the elementary school level. Traditionally, they are coming through colleges of education. One of the things I'm hopeful about, if you've seen talk of USF Sarasota Manatee merging with USF Tampa, is I'm hopeful that they'll be able to bring additional programs into Sarasota. Currently, they just have the elementary ed program. Special education, finding ESE teachers is extremely difficult. They're hard to find. You mentioned correctly that colleges of education just aren't producing graduates, specifically in those hard to find areas, math, science, ESE. When we look at our vacancies going into Monday, the great majority of them are in ESE. So you talk about differentiated pay. There are a number of people who held ESE certification at one point in time. the state went to this system in which it used to be you had an ESE certification, you were considered highly qualified to teach anything. Then they said you had to have an academic subject.
Right.
And so our ESE teachers went and then added an academic subject. And then they went and said, well, now that I have this academic subject, my preference would be to teach in that. And I have to tell you, it's understandable, is that if I'm going to pay you the same to teach English as I'm going to teach ESE, I can understand you wanting to move there at some point in your career. So differentiated pay is certainly something we'll have to look at long term.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else we're wrapping this up with?
Well, I guess I get to ask the last
Okay.
question. As we head into the school year, I've been using the term hopeful. I'm really hopeful for the start of the school year. We use the analogy. You talked about football a little earlier. We're all undefeated going into the season. What makes you hopeful as we go into the 1920 school year?
Yeah, I think really just starting the year off with the right perspective. And I talked about this a little bit at our ESE Summer Institute. But one of the things that I got from the Teacher of the Year conference that really kind of solidified something that I always knew, but I didn't really have words for, was they said, know your why. What's your why when you walk in? Because everybody's undefeated when they start off the year. And then we get into the classroom and we start, having a couple defeats here and there, and people get, frustrated and they get burnt out. But really having a perspective of why you are in that classroom and why you are called to work with your students. I always tell people, 1 John 4:19 says we love because he first loved us, and that's my why, is I'm able to show my students love and patience and kindness because I've been loved so well. And that looks different for everybody. But having something on even those days when you don't feel undefeated, when you get home and you turn on Netflix and you just want to, veg out for the rest of the night. And I know a lot of teachers know that feeling. But having that why that wants you to get up in the morning the next day and go back into that classroom and, work with your kids, I think is really what leaves me hopeful, because I always say passion ebbs and flows. We talk about passion a lot in education, but it ebbs and flows. There's some days when you're super passionate and other days when you're not so much.
Right.
But it's commitment and being able to show up every day with that commitment to do what's best for our students. And so that's what leaves me hopeful for this school year.
That's incredible. Learning to live off of those highs, those moments that remind us why we got into this profession.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to speak to all of our first-year teachers. They weren't all first-year teachers. They were new to Sarasota County. They were coming from other districts, coming out of colleges of education, coming from other professions, but they were grouped elementary, middle, and high. Had a chance to go and speak with them last week, and my message to them is the same message to every teacher, bus driver in this district is, number one, I know you have options. We have high-quality folks that are in demand in other occupations. They're in demand by other school districts. So first and foremost, thank you for choosing to work here in Sarasota County. There's nothing more important than our kids, and it's humbling when you talk to folks and understand that the personal sacrifice they make to contribute to our kids' lives. So I always say, thank you for becoming a teacher, but more importantly, thank you for becoming a teacher here in Sarasota County. I want to thank you for what you do with your kids at Oak Park every day. Being in your classroom is one of those highs, is that when you leave there, you just feel good about our school district. You feel good about Oak Park. I think you represent all of our teachers, the entire staff exceptionally well, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bowden.
And as we conclude here, I just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you have your Meet the Teachers coming up and some different events, but it's important that we come together as we look forward to a new school year. And thank you for what you do for our students as we stay every student, every day, whatever it takes. Thanks.